I want to delve into also some of the technical side of photography and just a bunch of stuff about not just for beginners of photography, but for even myself. I want to learn more about this. So first thing is, what equipment do you use as part of your setup?
So I guess for me as well, like I guess my photography varies quite a bit from street photography, which is out, you know, quote unquote, in the streets, capturing people doing all kinds of stuff. And so for that, I mean, for both, you're going to need a good camera. But for that, I think I want to be, when I'm thinking about the camera, I'm thinking about, you know, one, how easy it is for me to move around with this camera and this equipment, because I want to be as light as possible, because I want to be able to move around. So I might get a zoom lens in particular, because it allows me to, you know, something might happen and I might be standing far away. So it's either I run there or I have a zoom lens to be able to capture that from wherever it is that I am. And also change, you know, how close and how I frame things using the distance with the lens. So I think if you're more focused on street photography and like more documentary stuff, you want to go out there and capture what you see, I'd say, you know, a good camera, maybe small size, because you don't want it to be too obvious, because that's when people won't be as candid. So, I mean, I've even been doing stuff with my iPhone recently as well. Like, you'd be surprised what you can get out of your mobile phones. But I think, yeah, if you want to go around, a good camera and a zoom lens is the two things you want to think about. A good zoom lens, because you don't want to take out multiple lenses. Whereas if I'm doing more portraiture stuff, a bit more art orientated stuff, that's when I might want to bring in additional lighting. So just getting a good lighting setup. You can go on Amazon and get like cheap continuous lights and stuff like that. But because, you know, you're stationing people and you're trying to really get a clear, crisp piece of art or image, that's when I would, you know, look for lighting setups, look for nice backdrops, you know, maybe a cloth or a professional backdrop, or just using backdrops outside, using things that might be visually appealing, because at this point, you know, I'm trying to create a story as opposed to just capturing a story that I'm running by with. So I have a bit more time. I can play with the lighting to get things better. And I don't really need a zoom lens, because I have the time to move around physically to capture the image I want. Whereas, you know, out on the streets, everything is sharp. You need to, there's no time to move. You just need, you know what I mean? You need a lens that can do that. Whereas if it's more art and portraiture stuff, then you have that time and that flexibility to take it easy and really concentrate on the clarity and the lighting of what you're doing. So yeah, I think if you're looking to do more portraiture, more artwork, I think, you know, looking into lighting and backdrops and things that you can use to enhance the story of your portrait is things I would think about. And when it comes to lenses, I would be less worried about getting a zoom lens, maybe get like a prime lens. So a prime lens is basically a lens that can't zoom in and out. But in terms of quality, they tend to be better quality because, I mean, I can go into the whole technicality of light, but let me just say that, yeah, prime lenses are better at capturing light than zoom lenses. But zoom lenses give you that flexibility if you want to be out and about and running around to capture anything as it happens. But if you want to take time, a good prime lens and good lighting for me is key.
All right. So another thing I was going to ask you related to that. So is there a particular brand that you're completely fixated on? Like, is it Canon, Nikon, Panasonic, Sony, you know?
Yeah, it's funny actually. So like, I'm team Nikon, let's say for now, quote unquote. And the only reason I'm team Nikon is because my friend, he bought a Nikon before me and I thought it looked cool. So I was like, oh, this looks cool. I might as well jump on it. And it was the camera strap, literally the way it says Nikon in the yellow. Like, I thought it just looked so cool. And I was like, okay, these guys know what they did. So I bought a Nikon And because cameras in themselves, you know, they're quite complicated piece of equipment. So, you know, you learn things about your camera as you go. So that's why I'm Nikon right now, because I know how to use Nikon cameras. But I have been Googling and YouTubing other things. I think, you know, Sony have some good cameras and Canon have some good cameras. So I wouldn't say I'm as loyal as an Arsenal fan to Nikon. Like I'd definitely be open to change it. Yeah. But so far, yeah, definitely I use Nikon because that's what I started with, and that's kind of what I know. I actually bought a book called How to Use Nikon DSLRs for Dummies, and I read it from like back page to front page to back page, and that really like explains like everything, like how does that camera work. I think that helps me in my work as well, because now like I'm so fast, like I know how to set. I shoot manually, which means like I kind of set or adjusted settings within my camera as I'm shooting. I don't let the camera decide. So you need to kind of understand the different components that come together to expose or, you know, capture light. And so those are buttons on the camera. So because I've used Nikon for so long and I know it, like I know which button does what, I know how to quickly adjust and change. So that's kind of why I use Nikon right now, because it helps me be quicker and sharper out in the streets. And I know how to use it, yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. Don't be offended. I'm a team Canon. Like mainly it's because of autofocus. That's the only reason. Like if it wasn't for that,
it's good.
I wouldn't know anything. But that's fair enough. I mean, Nikon, I want to do more research on Nikon, because I haven't, like, obviously I'm not the biggest, but I'm not a photography guy like that, so I wouldn't know too much of the specs. But usually when I think cameras, I think Canon and Sony. Like usually those are the ones that come out to me. So I know of Nikon, but I didn't know Nikon was that up there. But wow, you've made me more interested to see why Nikon is quite highly rated for you. So I do want to research on that. That's interesting.
No, I think there's, to be honest, you can really get caught up with the cameras because there's so many out there and they're constantly creating new ones. There's different brands. Like I even have a little Ricoh. I don't know if you remember Coventry Football Club, the Ricoh Arena.
Arena.
But basically this, like, I think it's Japanese or Chinese electrical company that also, they build cameras. And I have one of those little cameras, and like it's obviously it's not really a main brand, but even that, like I'm able to do some great stuff because I know I've learned that camera. I think that's the main thing is, okay, whatever camera you get, you need to just learn and know how it works well, because once you know how it works well, then you can now flex different levers or change different settings to really get the picture that you want to get. So when you're looking, Nikon, Canon, Sony, they're all good, and Google what it is you're looking for. But I think what is really important is learning your camera, like learning how to operate your camera. The same way you learn how to operate Microsoft versus Mac or OS. Like once you get it and you're there, you just kind of need to keep training yourself to understand how it works so that you can do what it is you want to do with that camera.
Makes sense. That's a good analogy about that. Thanks, because boy, when I open the camera the first time, there's so many bells and whistles that I didn't think I would understand. Like when someone tells me, aperture and shutter speed, I'm like, what? But it's stuff that I know as a beginner I have to learn as well. So I get what you mean by learning your camera. Like it's just stuff you have to go with and understand. So here's another question for you. So as a beginner or someone who's just brand new into photography, they want to get into photography. What type of equipment or camera can they use that is either easily accessible or maybe even cost efficient? So they want to take a picture just right now, let's say, or they're like, "Oh, I want to get into exhibitions, but I don't know how to start and I don't have that much money." How would you advise them to get into that or start with?
Literally, like the mobile cameras nowadays is like insane. Like if you really are just really starting, like don't underestimate the power of the iPhone camera and also like some of the Android cameras as well. Like they are very powerful, and you also have it with you everywhere you go because it's your phone. So then you have more chance to practice and to take pictures and stuff like that. Whereas, you know, when you have an actual camera, then you have to make a conscious effort of, okay, I'm going to take this camera, I'm going to go here. It's heavy, it's physical, you can feel it.
Honestly.
So you have to think about it a bit more. Whereas if you're just starting out, really you just want to be shooting as much as you can to kind of understand. You want to understand photography for yourself and what is you're drawn to, and repetition is key. So I think I wouldn't underestimate like your mobile camera, and there's little accessories you can get on Amazon to like change the lenses, and you know, you can get some zoom lenses and some like fish eye lenses that create this cool effect. So I think if you really want to start out and start on a budget and just get taking pictures, don't overlook your phone camera. But then yeah, if you want to, you know, maybe if you want to go a bit more advanced, you feel like you're too good for phones and stuff, like I would say just Google entry level DSLRs, and then you can kind of see the different cameras that are available that are considered entry level, and start from there. And you know, most of them will come with a standard lens, so I would use that lens to start with. But then also maybe look in and Google like 35mm lenses and 50mm lenses. I'd say Google that so that you understand what the difference is there, because when you now feel like you want to buy your first lens, because lenses are expensive as well, like they're more expensive than the camera in some instances. So you know, as you grow, you eventually get more lenses, but in terms of deciding what the first lens you want to get is, researching, you know, the focal lengths and what those different lenses do is key for you to be able to pick that first one. For example, like a 35mm lens will get more within the frame, but you know, it won't be as close and as intimate with your subject unless you move closer to them. Whereas a 50mm lens is going to be a bit more closer, but you lose more of the surroundings and things like that. So depending on what you want to do, like your lens choice is quite important as a beginner, because you're probably going to start off by buying one lens. And so that one lens you start with is going to be what you tend to use more often, and even what you train and you learn yourself, because like visually, like you don't really realize it, but you're constantly feeding a way of looking into your eyes when you start taking photos. And so the lens that you've chosen will determine the way you see how a camera works initially, and what fits in the frame. So yeah, I would say start with the phone, look at a basic level DSLR, and then from there start looking into lenses and understanding what it is you want to capture, and then look into buying a good lens that will get you clear and crisp pictures. But because you research a lens, you know that it's going to get the kind of images you want to capture.
Okay, all right, that's interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I was even going to ask one more related to that. Would you say a DSLR or a mirrorless camera? What would you prefer?
Oh, okay, yeah, in that sense, so I've actually used both, and I prefer DSLRs because they're more mechanical. Like you can feel like you're taking a picture. You know, you're hearing some things are moving within the camera.
I get that.
And even like from the viewfinder perspective, because when you're looking into the viewfinder with a DSLR, what you're seeing is mirrors. Like, so it's kind of like a reflection of what's really happening in front of you, which is a bit more, you know, closer to the truth. Whereas with the mirrorless, it's a digital screen. So it's like the camera is looking at a scene, and then an image is created on a tiny screen where you put your eye. So it's a bit more digital. So it's like it's one step removed, I feel like, from what's really going on, because it's, you know, it's coming into the camera, being processed, then shown on the screen. Whereas a mirror is like, it's just light bouncing. So it's, I don't know, it's really doesn't make a difference. But for me, I kind of want to keep as much authenticity as I can. So I prefer DSLRs because it makes me feel more like what I'm doing is real and it's closer, even though it's still a digital camera. But DSLRs are good because they're smaller. They're a bit more powerful and nowadays in terms of what the images they can produce. But one thing I would consider with mirrorless is that their batteries don't last as long.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, because it's all like, it's everything about it is digital, whereas the DSLR there's still some mechanical parts, like I was saying with the mirrors, as opposed to a digital screen in the viewfinder. So it's using a lot more battery. So I would consider that like mirrorless is definitely die quicker. But for me, my favorite is DSLR. Right now I'm trying to find a DSLR that is technically as good as the mirrorless camera that I like, but it's still a DSLR because I don't want to commit to mirrorless yet, just because it's for my style and how I like to work, it's not for me. But honestly, there's not much difference in terms of what the actual image produces. So for someone that just wants to take pictures, I wouldn't worry about that. It's more when you're delving into your artistry and your relationship with a camera and photography and how much that means to you. Like, because as you can see, I'm deep when it comes to photography. So I want to be as close to the real thing as possible. That's why I like DSLRs. In fact, I just bought a build a camera yourself kit. So I'm about to build my own camera. Yeah, and try and just shoot.
I didn't even know those existed. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, you can literally build one yourself, and then you can use like old school film and take pictures with that. So, you know, process the film, all that. Like that's how deep and far I like photography. Like I want to understand how it was initially. So that's why I'm more DSLR, because it's a bit more old school. But yeah, I think if you're trying to decide which one, there's not really much difference. Maybe just think about the battery life. And yeah, the benefit that the DSLR will probably be a bit smaller than the mirrorless will be a bit smaller than the DSLR.
That's fair.